My name is Vince from Speak Freely, and I have a function coming up called Sales Masterclass. It's going to be in the Medford Holiday Inn, March 19th. Going to last for maybe 2 or 3 hours, and I'm going to be able to share. I'm not going to be able to give you a CD, a DVD. I don't have a book that I've written, and I don't have anything that you have to buy after the class. This is just pure sharing knowledge, not only for business, but also for personal reasons. Okay, you're going to come out of there with principles that you're going to use in your career over and over and over again. One of the biggest things when I see an insurance agent, when I see a real estate agent, and they go before a client, as far as I'm concerned, when you have a new client sitting on the opposite side of the desk, or you open the door and they greet you and take you in, you're looking at, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but you're looking at a cardboard cutout. You know nothing about it. So instead of greeting this couple or this person, this new client, with who you are, I do this, I do that, our company's been in business, but you know nothing about them. You know none of their desires. You don't know what their banana splits are. You do not know if holding their wives, if they're even married. You have nothing about them. So my advice to any sales associate in all the various companies, to all the corporate owners who want their salespeople to be working on all cylinders, 100%, not reactive, but absolutely proactive. I try to teach minimum, maybe 20 different techniques. One of them is, before you leave your office and you're going to meet a new client, the most important thing is to ask questions. You should have 6, 7 questions, key questions. That's the key that's going to open up your career. When you find out what their passion is, what their desire, what they're looking to accomplish by using your services, then you'll be able to feel out and complete that sale, which makes you more different than all the other competition. The other thing is, ask your question and zip it. Just zip it. Don't speak anything else. Gather the information that you need to know where you can guide them one way or the other and make a successful sale. I'd like to tell you a story about, I was at a Chamber of Commerce meeting, maybe about a year ago, and there were 3 real estate agents that had the opportunity to speak for 5 minutes each. And they were very nervous. And they also had tics. Every one of us has tics. 95% of the people, when they're speaking in front of a large group, has some sort of a nervous thing going on. Anyway, the first guy, he used his phone, and he read the phone and picked his head up and explained his business. And I own a real estate company. I do this, I do this, I do that. And then the second one, beautiful gal. She was dressed professionally. She spoke wonderfully. Only her tic was she had these high heel shoes, and on the parquet floor, I heard clippity clop, clippity clop, clippity clop. And she walked forward and then backwards, clippity clop, clippity. Now, with the wording that message that she had, all I concentrated was on that clippity clop, clippity clop, clippity clop, clippity. So the third person got up, and this person, I'm going to say his name is John, and he gets up and he basically said what the other 2 real estate agents said. And at the end of it, I'm sitting at my table, and John walks over and he said, "Vince." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" I said, "Absolutely. What's up?" He said, "Can you criticize my speaking?" I said, "No, I can't. I'm sorry. I can critique it though. Would you like me to critique it?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what? You started out pretty good. Did you realize that as you were speaking, you backed up into the left corner, into the darkness within the 5 minutes?" He said, "I did, didn't I?" I said, "Yeah, you did." I said, "But let me ask you a question." And before I asked him the question, I positioned myself around the table, and his body position changed. And I said, let me ask you a question, John. Did you do anything to benefit your customers, or are you just out there to make a commission? I said, does a company look to please their customers and make them memorable of what you did? He said, of course. I said, can you give me an idea of something that happened? He said, so he thought about it for a few minutes. And then he said, all right, I got one about 3 weeks ago. He said, we're ready to close the real estate office. And I see these people at the door, and they're kind of, they didn't see any cars. He said, and I wave them in. I come on in. And they come in, I said, sit down. He uses his hands. He's Italian. What can you expect? So they sit down. He's coffee, tea, and the woman, she wanted tea and gave her tea. He said, how can I help you? And he said, you know what? The things that we did for them, and we signed them up, and within a month, they had everything going on. They had everything ready to go, and they're off to Florida. I said, that's a good story. I said, were you nervous telling me that story? No, why? I said, because look out in front of you. I had positioned him in front of the other 45 people in that room. I said, did these people make you nervous when you were talking? He said, no, I didn't even see them. I said, that's right. I said, don't go and say about your business. When next time you do either a networking event or a chamber of commerce, get up there. People know what real estates do. Talk about how you've helped a customer, a good result. All right. People want to know how much you care about them and achieving the things that they need done way more. As far there's ordinary and extraordinary. Ordinary means that you do what everybody else does. They can go anywhere. All plumbers do the same thing. On this, people want to know specifically what John has done in his career to benefit people. And with these stories, stories are memorable. They're not forgettable. So your key as a salesperson is to create memorable events that will network you out, and people will start recommending you from one person to another to another. Here's another thing. Let's say you go to a networking event or a trade show, and there's hundreds of people walking around the floor, and all of a sudden they read your name badge, the name of the company, your name, and whatever the company function is, and they happen to ask, what is that? A fella had asked me about that a while back, a few months ago. And I said, so what did you say? And he said, I told him everything about the business, how many years in business, what we do, how we do this and what do that. And he said, so what do you think? He said, why are these people asking me questions about what I do in business? And when he was finished, I said, he said, well, what do you think of my presentation? I said, so what? It's basically ordinary, what everybody does. They explain the business. There are real estate people, there are insurance people, there are carpenters. People know basically what these people do. I said, if he would have asked me what that particular business is, or you, I said, have you ever done anything that actually advanced somebody, helped somebody in that particular category, whatever it might be? And he said, yeah. I said, well, then somebody asked you, tell the story. Tell a 5-minute story. Let me give you, for instance, I'm also wedding officiant. And a dear friend invited me to a table. And he said, you can have a third of the table if you want. Absolutely. I don't want any money. He said, just take a third of the table. So I made up some flyers, and I had a sign. And there were hundreds of couples walking up and down the aisles. My buddy, he does fireworks and for weddings. And as a matter of fact, he does fireworks for the Jets, New York Jets. And so we get there, and I take my flyers and I walk into the middle of the aisle, and customers are coming at me. And everybody at these trade shows, they have their little bag, and they'll pick up a squeeze ball and pick up the pens and the pads and all this stuff. So I walk out into the middle of the aisle with my 8.5 by 11 brochures, and I stop them and say, real quick, would you mind terribly if I put one of these in your bag? And they grab it, they look at it for a few seconds, and I say, I'm a wedding officiant, but if you have a second, can I tell you why I'm different than any other wedding officiant? And they say, sure. And I told them a 2-minute story. I booked 2 weddings from doing that. My buddy, he sat behind the desk with his brochures and everybody, and they don't even know how fireworks would be introduced into their wedding package. And they took a couple of novelty things off his table, but nobody stopped and really asked him. So he said to me, how are you doing that? I said, grab some of your brochures. Let's get out into the center of the aisle. You've got to get out there, and you've got to tell people what makes you different, or what your specialty of your business is. And you're going to have so much more success. That's what I go over. I don't, at my functions, I don't use PowerPoint and go over 20 questions, boring questions. I try to touch you with things that I've learned over my career, and not just from me and not from reading books, but from actual experiences and my elders that were in business before me. These tips, if you come to my function, it's $35 and 2 hours, maybe 2-3 hours of your time, but you will walk away with techniques and ideas that you'll use in your career throughout your whole life, not just for business purposes, but also, I'm Italian as well, I'm using my hands, but also in your personal life. I have a dear friend who's been in business most of his life, 30 years. And I said to him, hypothetically, have you ever been invited to maybe your best friend's backyard barbecue with your wife? And maybe it's a luau or something, and the backyard is packed with people you don't know. Can you go in that backyard and feel totally comfortable? And he said, oh, hell no. I can't do that. And this is a person who deals with people every single day of the week. And so he said, I wouldn't even know where to start. He said, I'd probably make a plate and go sit in the back of the yard. And I said, well, there's something I call the 3 C's that I go over during my seminar. And the first one is, the most important part about relationships is you make eye contact with a person. And then it's followed up by good evening or good morning, sir, or whatever it is. The second after eye contact is a compliment. Look at this person. And give us, it has to be absolutely a sincere compliment, not phony. And I might say, let me give you for instance. I went to a Johnny Mathis concert and with another couple and my wife, and we get there, it was springtime. So I take off my light jacket, and I got up and turned around and put it on the back of the seat. Well, the couple behind me, I made eye contact, and my wife, Andre, and his wife, they all looked at me because they knew where I was going. So I make eye contact and I said, good evening, sir. That was the first thing. And then I said to him, that was contact. The second thing I did was compliment. He had a nice hat on. I said, listen, if you ever want to get rid of that hat, please, I'll give you my phone number. I love it. That was a compliment. And then the third was find something in common. 3 C's. And I said to him, first time that you're seeing this? He said, no. My wife and I come each year to see him at Westbury. And I said, you're pretty local? And he said, yeah, we live right here in Massapequa. And if I wanted to, I could have kept talking to him all night. He was a friendly guy. Meanwhile, my wife and the other couple, they're looking at the ceiling and say, here he goes again. But that's what it's about. You can walk into a backyard, you can walk into a business function, a networking function, and you can talk to anybody. And everybody thinks that business is strictly business and writing contracts. It's not. It's about making relationships. finding out what turns on other people and take interest in them, even more so than your business. You don't have to make a sale every single time. You have to build relationships. And this is the last thing that I'll share with you. To speak or not to speak? That is the question. No, it's not. Everybody must speak. And I know you're thinking Shakespeare, but Shakespeare said to be or not to be. I understand that, but it's the same thing. Too many people are reactive instead of proactive. They're 95% of people are afraid to speak in front of a group. And you might say, well, Vince, that's not true. I own a business. I do this. I do that. And yet, if you want proof, think about maybe perhaps every one of us has gone to a wake. And you get in front of the funeral director will get in front of the room and say, would somebody like to say something of Susan or John? And the reaction is everybody looks around the room towards each other and wonders who's crazy enough to get up and speak to this group, even though they've known this individual all their lives. This person has helped them. And so me, I pick up my hand, I go in front of the room. And it's just a paragraph. It's a couple of paragraphs. You don't have to have this thing on your phone that you have to read. And I said, Mr. G, if God's purpose in life is to make a difference in others' lives, did Mr. G make a difference in anybody's lives in this room? And people raised their hand. And I said, I'd like to give you two principles, two things that happened to me. One was I went to visit my friend John in the office, and he was tied up on the phone, and I went to shake Mr. G's hand, and him being a strong individual, he crushed, literally crushed my hands. I went right down to the floor on one knee, and I said, "Whoa, Mr. G, what's going on?" He says, "I never come in with the fisher hand. Always a come in with the thumb to thumb." I said, wow. So I went in, thumb to thumb. He squeezed. I didn't feel a thing. Now, here's the thing. Every single time, and I've shaken thousands of hands. Every time I shake a hand, who am I thinking of? Mr. G. Second, I walk into an office one afternoon on a Saturday with my suit and my white shirt and a tie hanging. And, of course, John's tied up on the phone. Who's there? Mr. G. So right away, I go in, thumb to the thumb, and I shake his hand. And he says, what are you looking for? I said, John was going to help me tie my tie for the wedding. I don't know how to do that. He said, I take care of that. What do you want to do? Do you want to be a sharper or mediocre? And I said, I want to look a sharper. So he took me into the bathroom, put his arms over my shoulder, and he wind up with doing a few different loops. And he says, that's a singular Windsor. He says, it's a mediocre. He said, now I'm going to show you sharper. So he tied it again. He went through twice, buttoned it up. He says, and now that's a double a Windsor. Now that's a sharp. Now, the point of the whole story in front of that room was to say, as a professional, every time I put on a suit, every time I put on a tie, who do I think of? I think of Mr. G. And that's what this person meant to me. And these are the differences. You don't have to go up there and read this book or take an iPad up there. Just speak from your heart and tell a story. And that's just with about anything in life that makes you feel uncomfortable, as if somebody is watching you. That's one of the other principles that I teach at this function. That's for whether you go to a wake or whether you are explaining in a presentation. It's the same exact thing. Just speak from your heart, tell a story, and you'll be surprised how proactive that is, instead of being reactive. Last thing I want to tell you guys is we're having a function. It's called the Sales Masterclass in Medford, New York, in the Holiday Inn. It's going to start at 6:30, and it's probably going to run a couple of hours. It's $35, and you can either Venmo me or give me a call at 631-236-2001. Thank you so much. Bye.